The Art of Attention is really all about us starting a conversation and a dialogue with our industry friends and peers about the rising epidemic of cognitive overload. From our pioneering discoveries with neuroscience in application to retail, we know that our unconscious plays a huge role in our attention system, as these unconscious thoughts steer our behaviours towards and away from certain stimuli. We believe that by applying a neurobiological lens, we can do this effectively through the art of attention, connection and attachment.
So we started by creating this space that was not just immersive, we actually wanted it to transform, we wanted it to even respond to the stimuli that we were putting people through. So we actually had our audience come in, we had them put on VR headsets, we had 2 different environments, and essentially we took data through GSR readings that gave us an idea about the arousal and the stress that they were being put through between the 2 environments. So what we started noticing was that the cognitively overloaded environment was actually creating data that was transformed into these patterns that were a lot sharper and also more vibrant, which indicated the anxiety and the stress that we were expecting to see. Simultaneously, the audience were actually noticing, on the other hand, patterns were becoming a lot more organic. They were looking a lot softer in color palette. And essentially, this was created from the data that was actually coming from the more orchestrated environment.
So when I was in the overloading VR experience, I felt sort of a little bit overwhelmed. There was so much going on around me, it was hard to focus on one single element. I felt almost like I didn't know where to focus my attention.
So the orchestrated scenario, I felt the whole process very calming. The music and the whole scene really led you into the whole environment, and you did want to find out more.
After pausing to recognise the retail challenge, we started to ideate on a strategy to support the thinking behind cognitive fluency. We asked ourselves, how can we design a more effortless experience where our intended audience could feel seen, heard, and have a meaningful exchange?
After Lucy had gone through the detail and the science behind our process, we broke off into a creative workshop. As our guests work with peers on a mock brief, we're responding to our audience's need for information that is easy to share and immediate to understand, ultimately leading to cognitive fluency.
So before we actually started designing the event and the experience, we needed to understand what was relevant to our industry and to our audience, and essentially put together 3 hypotheses that we can work against. In order to test the effectiveness of the activation, we looked back at the quantitative and qualitative data that we took throughout the event. Essentially what we found was that when describing their interests, 83% of our audience said that longevity and quality was more important over temporary or convenience-led products and experiences. This shows that the orchestrated environment was actually better understood and connected more with our audience than the overloaded environment.
What was great to see when analysing the results is that we activated curiosity in 94% of our attendees. These participants were curious to find out more about the solution to cognitive overload and also how they could start to plan their own effectiveness journeys outside of the event.
I found the event really interesting and inspiring because it was really great to start to understand some of the psychology behind the customer and why they might make a purchase and how to make them feel engaged and involved in the space.
I think the format today worked really well. It flowed well, made me feel very comfortable when I came in. I really loved sitting down and having the experience straight away and meeting some really interesting people as well. I found it fascinating.
Overall, the results of this experiment prove that shouting louder on the high street just doesn't work. It neither sustains our attention, allows us to create connection, or supports us in securing an attachment to a brand.
With thanks to our collaborators and our experiment participants, we hope that this study sparks discussion and experimentation.